Welcome to Draft Central. I'm Bobby Krivitsky here with Evan Lazar and Taylor Kyles. And today we're talking about one of the top needs for the Patriots. That is the interior of their defensive line. Yes, they signed Bo Allen this offseason, but they certainly need more juice than that. And so let's start by talking about a first-round prospect who could check all the boxes that you're asking for from that position. And Evan, it's actually someone in A.J. Epenesa who played more at the end of the line and certainly fared well in that role in college. But I think at the next level, he could better serve a team by kicking to the interior.
Yeah, he doesn't have a ton of experience rushing over the interior offensive line, over the guards or over the centers. But at the combine, he said, he's more than willing to work it out, right? He's more than willing to figure that spot out. He played more on the edge, like you said, outside the tackle. I think straight up over the tackle as a 5 technique is probably where he'll live most of the time if the Patriots draft him. When you watch Epenesa and you look at his profile, you just see a guy that plays the position exactly how New England wants him to play. And he's a plug-and-play starter, I think, in their system because of the way that he plays the game. A ridiculously powerful guy in the upper body, right? Locks out that length, really extremely heavy hands, great hand fighter and technician in the trenches, and a guy that doesn't have the biggest first step or the best speed or athletic profile, but certainly can win by just pushing the pocket and using those heavy hands to get blocks off of him. He loves that 2-hand swipe move coming around the edge. He also has a really good just kind of stab and arm over type move that he'll use more on the interior as a rusher, but it's the ability to set the edge against the run that consistently stands out at Iowa. Nobody and anybody that they faced last year at Iowa could move this guy off the ball. He's just such a rock in the middle of that defense for them, and it's extremely difficult to push him around. So you look at all those kind of traits, and it just screams Patriots at you. It's a need. It's a position that they really could fill. You could especially use some depth at the defensive end spot. And they really never replaced Trey Flowers. They never really found a guy that can replace Trey Flowers. I think Epenesa certainly can be that guy that can kick inside in sub situations, third down, long passing situations on second down, but play 5 technique in their base defense and really just muck it up there. And I think last year as a junior, if he had come out, he probably would have been closer to a top 20, top 15 pick in the draft. He didn't have as good of a senior season. His stock kind of fell, and now we're talking about him as like a late first type of guy.
Yeah, when you took the words right out of my mouth with the Trey Flowers comparison, because watching both of them, I think it's flashier and easier to see pass rush ability and things like that when a guy wins with agility and bend and explosiveness. And Epenesa and Trey Flowers are guys who don't really win with that. They win with length and power and just overwhelming linemen, which is still fun in its own to watch. I mean, there are some times where he is absolutely dominating offensive tackles and pushed them into the backfield. And he's got enough moves that he's not a one-trick pony where he's just going to be pushing the pocket. I think he's also got a nice snatch and pull that you like to see. I think he got a sack. I believe it was against Michigan on that move. And he's someone who I think is, like you said, plug and play. He's going to dominate as a run defender. He's got great power in his length, so it's hard for linemen to get into his chest. And even when they do, I think he's also thick enough in his lower body that he can still stand his ground. So I agree. I think in odd fronts, he would definitely be better as a defensive end kind of role. Maybe kick him out on the edge, and if you're going to go with some even fronts. But I think he's going to make the most impact on the inside of the line. And he doesn't have the best first step, but I do think that he can get up on line and quickly, and especially against slower centers and guards. I think he could give them some trouble because he's so long and he can get there so quickly. So I think he's just an overwhelming power guy. The only player that we're going to mention that I really think is deserving of a first-round pick in the Patriots range, but I think he's someone that could really thrive in their system.
You really look at the Patriots draft history, and they have kind of a history of taking guys that the year before would have been a top 10 lock or a top 15 lock with Epenesa. I mean, we were talking about Epenesa being by far the best edge rusher in this class, even better than Chase Young or defensive end prospect, I should say, even better than Chase Young. And then Chase Young just has, they flip-flop this season because Chase Young has a great breakout year. Epenesa takes a step back. So New England's going to look at this and say, we're going to get a guy that a lot of people had as their top defensive end in the class going into the fall season. And now we're going to get him at 23 just because his production wasn't as good and his combine testing wasn't as good as people expected.
And he's someone who I think could actually make even more of an impact at the NFL level because he played a lot on the weak side of the offensive line. So he wasn't getting a lot of runs going in his direction. I think his length helped compensate for that because he doesn't have the best lateral agility. But at the NFL level, I think if you want to have him out on the edge, again, I think he's better on the inside. But if you do, I think you put him on the strong side, he's going to be a really tough guy to run at. So if you want to put him in that role, I think that you could see him really be more of a force once, especially he kind of gets up to speed with the NFL level. He's already a pretty smart processor. You see there's some times where they'll leave him unblocked at the mesh point on some different zone reads, and he's really good at quickly finding the ball and making a play and kind of getting down the line and making an impact.
Absolutely. When you see guys get their hands in him, when he gets his hands on guys, and you see even 325-pound offensive linemen get jolted back by that kind of hand power and that strength, that's when you know a guy is built up front and to, really survive in the trenches in a system like the Patriots run.
And Taylor, another prospect who spent a good deal of time playing at the end of the line, but could better serve a team at the next level by kicking over to the interior for the majority of his snaps. That's Yetur Gross-Matos. What are your thoughts on the former Penn State Nittany Lion?
Now, he's someone I also think he's gonna take some time to develop because you can see his processing slows him down at times and he plays pretty slow. It just kind of looks like, even on passing down, sometimes it looks like he's playing the run because he doesn't really have a plan when he attacks as a pass rusher. But with his length, I think he's someone that you're really gonna have fun with at the next level. He's got heavy hands, kind of similar to AJ Epinesa, where he wins with power, but he's also a better athlete, I think, and he's going to give you a little bit more bend. If you want to put him at maybe like the 3 technique spot, I think he could give you a lot of production once he gets up to speed with the NFL game and understands how to read different blocking concepts, understand what linemen are trying to do to him, and have a better sense for what's kind of happening without having to really think it through and then do what he wants to do. I think once you can unleash those physical tools because he's not playing in his head, he could be a really good value pick as someone who you might get a little later on than he would be if he were really up to that NFL acumen mentally, but definitely an intriguing prospect.
Yeah, it's a guy that's 6'5" and has nearly 35-inch arms. So he's got an incredible length. And you got to talk about the off-field stuff with him, though. This is very important for his NFL future. There's a lawsuit from Penn State where he's named with a bunch of other upperclassmen in a hazing suit. And there was some just things that were pretty disgusting said, at least claimed to have said in the lawsuit. So you have to vet those types of things, certainly with a prospect like Gross-Matos. But at the same time, we talked about how Epenesa doesn't have the greatest first step or the greatest athletic profile. Well, Gross-Matos is on the other side of the coin for me. This is a guy that fires off the ball, that can split double teams, that can knife himself into gaps, that can use his length and his quickness to really cross face and get into the backfield quickly. I think that I'm a little higher on him than a lot of other people from the main reason that, one, he's very versatile. He's extremely versatile, that he can rush pretty much. I think you can rush him anywhere from a 0 to a 9. I truly think that he could probably survive anywhere on the defensive line and rush all up and down. The other reason being is that although his hand placement needs work, his timing and his sort of repertoire of moves that he has needs work, he still had 17 sacks and 34 tackles for loss in his last 2 seasons at Penn State. So even though he needs to work on all those things, he was so overwhelmingly athletic and just gifted physically that he was producing at an extremely high level in a Power 5 conference anyways. And I think that tells you just what type of athlete and what type of first step that this guy certainly has. He reminds me a little bit of Chandler Jones coming out of Syracuse just because of the rawness to his past plan, just to what he's going to go into, what type of move he's going to go into with it. And certainly the counters aren't necessarily developed there yet, but at the same time, that athletic profile, the length, the ability to get off the ball, the explosiveness, that's all things that you can kind of just take as a mold of clay and mold him into something that is even more beyond that, like Chandler has in the league.
Well, there's more of a sample size to go off of when it comes to what Yetur Gross-Matos and AJ Epinesa can do when they kick inside. More of a projection when thinking about what Marlon Davidson from Auburn could do. I thought he was misused at Auburn, quite frankly. A lot of times you see him not only on the edge, which doesn't seem like the best complement to his skill set, but in a 2-point stance. And so I'd be more curious to see. I think he can better serve a team, Evan, by kicking to the inside to not only give you that juice from a pass rushing perspective, but also with his size and power, he should be able to hold up well against the run.
This was a bizarre study from top to bottom. Just what were they doing with him? You know, they're putting a 305-pound defensive end in a 2-point stance and a wide 9. You know, and they're asking him to play in space. They're asking him to read mesh points. It just was a disaster at times for him because of that. But the one thing I will say about him is that he's a 4-year starter. He never missed a game, and he's consistent every single week. And those are types of traits that Bill Belichick absolutely loves: consistency and durability. So even though he's not a flashy prospect, you didn't turn on the tape and say, oh, who's this guy, right? It wasn't that type of situation. And certainly his teammate Derek Brown, who's going to be a top 10 pick probably at nose tackle, he flashed a ton more on the Auburn defense than Marlon Davidson did. At the same time, the things I like about him: extremely heavy hands, right? He's got the ability to really use his hands. He has got an accurate punch. We talked about Gross Matos really struggling with timing and punch accuracy. Well, Marlon Davidson's the total opposite. Those hands get quickly into the chest of the offensive lineman and control engagements extremely fast. I think the other thing is that because he's only 6'3", which doesn't sound undersized to us normal folks, but is undersized by NFL standards, at 6'3", he's got natural leverage already. He doesn't need to worry about pad level because he's automatically going to get under a lot of tackles who are 6'5", 6'6". He's just naturally able to leverage guys. And I'm not comparing him to Aaron Donald by any means, but that is what Aaron Donald does at such a great level with his height limitations. He's turned his height at 6 feet into a strength because he can play with leverage and get underneath guys. And I think that Davidson can have a similar type of strategy as to what Donald does. You know, you look at like a tight end, try to block this guy on the edge, and it's no chance. He's dominant against those types of undersized players or guys that don't have the ability to block like that. So he just does everything that the Patriots really like in that position. He's going to set your edge. He's going to rush the passer by not getting too undisciplined or get out of his gap or lose his rush integrity, and he's going to be consistent every single week down to down.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you hit the nail on the head. There's not a lot more I can even add. I mean, the athletic profile you like to see, definitely the heavy hands. Again, like you said, he was miscast, and it was definitely weird when I turned it on thinking he was an interior defensive lineman, and I see him on the edge standing up all the time. It was definitely weird, but you like to see the versatility in terms of different ways that Belichick could deploy him once, you know, he understands the speedy NFL game. I think he could improve a bit as a two-gapper. There were times where I saw him kind of drop his head and not really hold the point of attack as well as you'd like to see from the position that he's probably going to be in New England, where he's going to probably be an odd front defensive end. But the tools are definitely there. He could be an intriguing prospect. Personally, a little too rich for my taste, considering where I think he's probably going to go and where the Patriots' capital is at this point. But if they were able to maybe get into the second round and select him somewhere more in that range, I think he could be someone that they'd have fun moving around the line and really just unleashing in terms of his ability to get into the backfield, like you said, but also hold up against the run with that hand strength and with that length.
He is not a top 50 prospect. I don't know why anybody has him that high. I see people projecting him to go in the first round. I think they're crazy. You know, maybe he turns into that player eventually, but he just doesn't have the athletic ability right now that I see to have a guy to draft him that high. I mean, I've seen mock drafts that have the Patriots taking him at 23. I think it's insane.
Yeah.
I like Marlon Davidson, but like you, I think that's insane. I don't see the Patriots taking him at 23. I don't see him being worth right now being a first-round selection for any team. However, when it comes to filling the need of just trying to get a big-bodied prospect that the Patriots can plug into the middle of their defensive line, Taylor, what are your thoughts on Alabama's Raekwon Davis?
Now, he's someone that I like a lot more than I think he's getting hype for. He's got so many intriguing physical tools, the length, the power. He's a big guy. I think if you want to put him in the Patriots interior, he can line up anywhere. I think he'd probably be better off at more of a 5 technique, odd front defensive end role. But I think he has the tools to play the nose. It's just not really something he was asked to do a ton at Alabama. And he may take a little bit more refinement. I think his plan as a pass rusher and his vision there could definitely use work. But there's a lot of upside there that you haven't quite seen unlocked yet. And I think if you get him with a good coach who can teach him the game a little bit more and help him understand what he's seeing and really help his plan as a pass rusher so he knows what he's doing and he can unleash those physical tools, I think he could be a dominant player in every phase of the game. You could put him in the middle in those odd rush packages they like to use with the 3-down linemen and kind of use him on stunts because he has better lateral ability, I think, than you'd expect from someone with his size. So I think he's going to end up being one of the better value picks from the interior defensive line because it doesn't seem like he's getting a lot of buzz, but he's got a lot of physical tools and he still is a smart player, although he could use some work.
Yeah, the book on Raekwon Davis is interesting because as a sophomore, he had 8.5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss, and really broke out for that Alabama defense. And everybody saw the 6'6", 300-pound frame, and you're just like, this guy's going to be an absolute monster. Over his last 2 years at Alabama, the production completely went out the door. I think he only had 2 sacks over the last 2 years. It just wasn't what he was as a sophomore. On top of that, there was an incident at a bar in Tuscaloosa a few years ago where he allegedly shot himself in the leg, and it all sort of kind of went downhill from there for him. And there's some serious maturity concerns with him where he sort of read all the press clippings about himself after the 2017 season and didn't really want to work to improve his craft and to really make that next step as a player. And it showed on the field. But with that being said, when you watch his game and you watch some of the better games that he's played over the last couple of years, like turn on the Arkansas tape, for example, from 2019, excuse me, and the power is just incredible. You know, this is a guy that guys run into him and they fall off of him like he's a brick wall, and his hands get into people's chests, and he just he moves offensive linemen wherever he wants them to go. You know, he's at nobody's mercy out there. So you look at that, you look at the ability to be an elite 2-gapping defensive end, I think, in the Patriots system because of all that hand strength and that upper body power. And he actually plays with decent leverage at 6'6". You know, you think a taller guy, it's going to be difficult for him to keep his pads down, difficult for him to create leverage points, but he's pretty solid at doing those types of things despite his height. So I just look at a guy that is just a perfect mold for what the Patriots are going to look for at that position. And as long as buddy Nick Saban gives Belichick the seal of approval in terms of his character and his maturity concerns, I think that they have a player that they can probably plug and play at defensive end on that line as a rookie, just because even though he might need some mental processing, he might need to mature a little bit off the field. On the field, the power is directly translatable to an NFL field, and that's not going to be something that's going to disappear. He's going to be able to win those types of engagements at the NFL level just the same way that he did it at the college level. He's more of a bull rusher or a pocket pusher, I think, than a guy that's really going to hit you with a bunch of pass rush moves. He does have a nice arm over move that he uses it from time to time when guys duck their heads or they try to get into him quickly, and he'll just arm over. But at the same time, I think that he's probably an early down player for the most part, early in his career, certainly. And then maybe he can develop a pass rush plan and use those heavy hands to rush on the interior later on in his career or later on in his rookie season. But like I said, first down player, early down run defender, he can translate directly into the Patriot system.
This is a mid-round prospect who that familiarity, like you said, Evan, between Nick Saban and Bill Belichick is really going to come into play here, and to see what Nick Saban says about Raekwon Davis's maturation, because as a late-round prospect, a lot of value to be had if Belichick believes that he's in fact worth selecting and going to put in the work to live up to his potential, which we know is immense. You talked about the production he had earlier in his collegiate career. So we'll see what direction the Patriots go in that 4th round range when Raekwon Davis starts to become a more viable option for not just New England, but any team in the draft. For Evan and Taylor, I'm Bobby Krivitsky. For all of our Patriots-related content, including Evan's big board featuring the 50 players who would fit best in New England, check out clnsmedia.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Patriots Press Pass.